Imagine the current chess world champion Magnus Carlsen winning 125 games in a row without losing once, and then being challenged to a match by the richest man in the world, Bill Gates. In this video, we'll explore what happens when Bill Gates, boasting a 1200 rating, challenges Magnus Carlsen, the greatest chess prodigy of all time, to a one-on-one match. With Magnus's rating around 2800, 1400 points higher than Bill's, it was evident that Bill Gates was in for a tough match. But just how tough was it? We'll delve into it. If you're a chess enthusiast or just someone interested in watching two titans of the industry go head-to-head in a game of wits, you won't want to miss this video. We'll examine the strategies used by both players and reveal the surprising outcome of this highly anticipated match. So stick around until the end to see what happened when Bill Gates faced off against Magnus Carlsen. Magnus, the world champion and chess prodigy, would begin with only 30 seconds on his clock, while Bill Gates, the tech entrepreneur and novice chess player, would start with a full 2 minutes. This added an extra layer of challenge for Magnus, who would have to carefully plan his moves and make quick decisions in order to win. Meanwhile, Gates had the luxury of time to think through his moves and plan his options. With this, the match would become even more exciting and unpredictable, and it was anyone's guess who would come out on top. To begin the match, both players prepare their pieces and await the first move. Now, Gates chooses to open with e4, a common and well-known opening strategy in chess. However, this opening has become less popular in recent years due to the strong defense tactics that have emerged. As the game progresses, Magnus, being a skilled player and well-known for his strategic approach, opts to play a modified version of the Scandinavian defense against Gates' opening move. This is a move that many experienced players may use to counteract the e4 opening and create a more advantageous position on the board. Magnus' next move is to place his knight to e6, which effectively protects the other center square from Gates' pieces. By doing so, Magnus ensures that Gates cannot easily move another pawn forward and gain additional control of the board. This is an important part of Magnus' overall strategy as he seeks to gain an advantage over Gates and secure a strong position for himself in the early stages of the game. Overall, this game is shaping up to be an exciting and closely contested battle between two skilled chess players, with both making strategic moves and carefully positioning their pieces. It will be interesting to see how it unfolds and who ultimately emerges victorious. Bill Gates moves his knight on the f3 to further develop his pieces and create a more advantageous position on the board. On the other hand, Magnus, with his quick reflexes and keenest sense of strategy, responds by swiftly bringing his own knight out to c6. This has resulted in a mirror situation, where the positions of the knights on the board are identical to those in Carlsen's Nimzovich defense. This is a fascinating development in the game, as both players seem to be adopting a similar approach in their gameplay. It will be interesting to see how the game unfolds from this point, as both players continue to make calculated moves and strategic decisions in their pursuit of victory. At a glance, having your chess pieces in the same position as the reigning chess world champion may give you a sense of confidence and reassurance. However, upon closer inspection of the players' postures, it becomes evident that Magnus is far more at ease with the situation than Bill Gates. Magnus seems relaxed and comfortable, leaning forward in a slouched position, indicating that he is fully immersed in the game and focused on the task at hand. In contrast, Gates appears more rigid and upright, suggesting that he may be feeling a bit tense or anxious about the game's outcome. It is important to note that body language can be a powerful indicator of one's mental state, and in a game as complex and strategic as chess, even the slightest psychological advantage can make all the difference. Therefore, it will be interesting to see how each player's demeanor and body language evolve throughout the course of the game, and whether it affects the final result. After taking a moment to consider his next move, Bill Gates decides to continue developing his pieces by moving his bishop to the d3. In response, Magnus Carlsen responds with a strategic move of his own, developing his other knight to the f6. At this point, both players appear to be evenly matched in terms of their position on the board, with neither having a significant advantage over the other. However, this is where Gates makes his first mistake. In a surprising move, he advances his pawn to the d5, capturing the black pawn on d5 and offering a trade to Carlsen. This may have seemed like a good idea at the time, but it turns out to be a costly mistake. By offering the trade, Gates has inadvertently opened up his position, leaving his king vulnerable to attack. This is a common error made by newbies who are too focused on capturing their opponent's pieces without considering the long-term consequences of their actions. During the game's development, it will be interesting to see how Gates attempts to recover from this mistake and whether Carlsen is able to capitalize on his opponent's error and gain the upper hand in the play. You know, chess is a game of strategy and foresight, and even the smallest mistake can have a major impact on the outcome. At first glance, trading pieces may appear to be a good strategy. However, in this particular case, it has opened up an important opportunity for Magnus Carlsen to further develop his position on the board by capturing Gates' pawn with his on the d5. Magnus has created an opening for his queen to move freely onto one of the 4 strongest squares in the board. As Magnus moves his queen on the powerful square, he simultaneously threatens both Gates' knight on f3 and bishop on d3. This creates a potential for Magnus to gain a significant advantage in the game by putting pressure on Gates' pieces. However, Gates does not take it lightly and quickly develops his second knight out to the c3. This move is a direct threat to capture Carlsen's queen, which forces Carlsen to move his queen away to the h5. It is at this point that a plan begins to formulate in Carlsen's head. With his queen now positioned on the edge of the board, Carlsen is seemingly vulnerable to attack, but in reality, he has already formulated a counterattack strategy that could potentially turn the tables on Gates. As the gameplay evolves, it will be fascinating to see how Carlsen executes his plan and whether Gates is able to defend against it. After only 7 seconds have passed on Carlsen's clock, Gates is seen to be carefully planning his next move. He seems to be strategizing and analyzing the potential outcomes of various moves before making his decision. Ultimately, he decides to castle kingside, a move that involves moving the king 2 squares toward the rook, then moving the rook adjacent to the king on the opposite side. This is considered to be a strong defensive tactic as it places the king in a safer position while also bringing the rook to the center of the board where it can be used to control important squares. Castling kingside is a commonly used opening move, as it quickly moves the king out of the center and towards the edge, where it's less vulnerable to attack. Additionally, the rook is placed in a position where it can potentially control important squares in the center, or be easily moved to the sides to defend the king. Overall, Gates' decision to castle kingside shows his thoughtful approach to the game and his awareness of the importance of defensive moves in chess. By taking his time and analyzing the board before making a move, he is demonstrating a strategic mindset that is essential for success in the contest. It is becoming increasingly apparent that Magnus Carlsen is a formidable chess player, as evidenced by the speed and precision of his moves. In fact, he seems to be playing with an almost supernatural level of foresight and intuition. In a bold way, Carlsen moves his bishop up to g4, a strategic decision, as it places the bishop in a position where he can exert greater control over the board and create potential threats against Gates' pieces. In the course of the play, it becomes clear that Carlsen's earlier move was indeed the beginning of the end for Gates, who struggles to keep up with the pace of the game. In the course of the contest, Gates made a move by advancing his pawn to h3. This was aimed at threatening Carlsen's bishop, with the intention of forcing it to move away from its position. However, Carlsen saw an opportunity in this move and responded by moving his knight to e5. This offered to sacrifice his bishop for a pawn. Gates took this as an opportunity to gain an advantage over the world champion, and he gladly opted for the trade. A pawn for a king is a trade that most players would accept any day of the week. Bill Gates even expressed his surprise at Carlsen's move, as it seemed like an amateur mistake. Carlsen responded by taking the pawn with his knight. At this point, the fate of the game had already been sealed, but only the world champion seemed to realize it. Gates moved his knight to f5, taking Carlsen's knight, which appeared to be available for capture. However, in doing so, Gates sealed his own fate, as he had nowhere else to go. A fatal checkmate. Both Carlsen and Gates shook hands and shared a laugh. It was evident that Carlsen had planned this move all along, and Gates had fallen into the trap. This game serves as a reminder that sometimes, what may appear as a mistake can be a part of a grand strategy. Carlsen's sharp focus and tactical acumen proved to be too much for his opponent to handle, and he eventually emerges as a clear victor. The way Carlsen thinks and executes his moves, his ability to anticipate his opponent's next move and counter it, is nothing short of amazing. He makes it all seem effortless, and it's a true pleasure to watch him perform. It's easy to underestimate the talent and expertise of those who are at the apex of their profession, but watching them in action against a regular person can be a humbling experience. It makes us appreciate the hard work and dedication it takes to reach that level of excellence, and it inspires us to strive for excellence in our own pursuits.